Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We will be looking at Solid Edge wiring harness design connected mode functionality. This is the communication and data sharing of the Solid Edge MCAD and Solid Edge electrical ECAD tools. A little bit about myself. If this is your first time seeing one of my webinars, I have over 20 years of end-user design engineering experience. During that time, I worked in the manufacturing, architectural, and automotive design industries. I built a strong working knowledge of most popular 3D design softwares, such as Inventor, CATIA, SolidWorks, several Autodesk products, and obviously Solid Edge. As mentioned, I am currently a Solid Edge application engineer with a focus on the mechanical and electrical CAD design platforms. My career interests include generative design, additive manufacturing, and process improvement, or Kaizen. For this topic, we will demonstrate the bridge in and bridge out functions in disconnected mode. This would be sharing your ECAD data to other third-party electrical products or software applications. We will also be using the bridge in and out functionality while in the connected mode to integrate the Solid Edge MCAD tool. Then we will see the cross-select tool in action within each tool. Really cool visual functionality. Solid Edge electrical design supports two types of touch points with MCAD. The first is the wiring design, where the wiring connectivity created in the schematic environment can be exchanged with 3D MCAD tools such as Solid Edge. In return, Solid Edge wiring design can retrieve wire links, components, devices from the 3D tool and use them for accurate purchasing information along with voltage drop calculations, etc. For Solid Edge harness design, we can use the 3D native geometry to create a flattened 2D harness within the Solid Edge harness design. This example, we will show how to bridge electrical data in and out from Solid Edge wiring design and how it integrates within the Solid Edge MCAD tool. Upon bridging data in and out, the data is first processed based on some default settings within the tool, set forth in the Siemens Solid Edge Electrical Adapters Resources Bridge.Properties file, which contains configurable properties that can affect how your adapter handles design objects during the import, export, and/or merging operations. Your team or system administrator can personalize these settings set forth to adhere to your own company's standards and practices. These settings allow precise control of each attribute in the data as it flows between the systems. Now let's go ahead and check this out in action. So first we're going to take a look at the Solid Edge electrical environment. And we're going to kind of demonstrate a few different examples here, but this first step I'm going to just show the Solid Edge electrical tools in the disconnected mode. So this is going to be a scenario where you're not quite set up yet to share data or information to your Solid Edge MCAD tool, but maybe you want to use this information for Excel or maybe some other manufacturing purposes or maybe some other electrical tool that your company may use. But we're first going to kind of look at the workflow tab. So the workflow tab is pretty much where we're going to do all the communication, configurations, and actions. So we'll look at a couple of simple features here. So first we're going to look at the bridge in feature. So the bridge in feature is it allows you to import connection lists files into your active diagram. So let's go ahead and click on this first. So as you can see here in the list here, there's .con file. So these are connection list file types. So these are pre-configured lists that have been populated for this example. And we can also look at the bridge options that we have here. Here you can adjust default bridge options before bridging the information or the files in. Now when we get to the point of actually bridging in this data, we have the option to select what is the source of the information. Is it an internal document? Is it a customer document or from a supplier? We can add that simple information right off the bat. So let's go ahead and look at one of these connected lists here. Translates. So it gives us a pretty quick report of what happened. Now I don't have this configured to any specific thing yet, so there's a couple errors. But it basically will give you a list of everything that it's bridging in. So all the information is coming with the data. Our second option is the bridge out feature. which is used to export the wiring data of the active diagram into two specific file types. So we have the CMP file type, which is the components, and then we have the .con, which is the connectivity elements of the design. And in addition to the options button, we also have the bridge filter feature. This will allow us to select the design harness to be extracted. So this was already a pre-populated harness within this design. Now if we export this, we'll go ahead and run through this step. Already exists, yeah, I've already created this previously, so let's go ahead and hit yes. Takes a second to progress through here, and then we get a quick little report out of what was bridged out. So we had we exported 3 wiring connectivity files, and we exported 3 component files, 8 in total. No warnings, so we're good there. Now if we cancel this dialog box here, you can see this third option here, the filter. So essentially that's identical to the last step we just performed. It's just kind of a shortcut, or maybe just a different way to get to the same function. So both of the bridge in and bridge out functions we just saw here are performed in the disconnected mode. Alternatively, the electrical tool can be connected to the Solid Edge 3D MCAD tool, allowing for bridging of data between the tools. So let's see this in action. So here you can see the two environments side by side here. So here we have our 2D wiring schematic in the Solid Edge electrical tool, or the SEED. And then on the right hand side we have our Solid Edge MCAD tool, and we have the same harness opened up in here. As you can see, it's just components here. There are no wires or harnesses or anything established. We do have 2 connectors in here, but we'll get into that. So let's first take a look at the actual connection methods of each environment. So we'll first look at the Solid Edge environment. We'll maximize this. So the first step we need to do is go into the Tools tab and enter into the electrical routing environment. So once we're in the electrical routing environment, you can see we have a couple of options at our disposal here on the electrical group. We have configure, and then we have connect. So let's look at the configuration. And again, this is usually configured by default, and it's basically just going to assign 2 ports, one for the Solid Edge electrical tool and one for the Solid Edge MCAD tool, to communicate to each other. As you may or may not know, if they're both on the same port, they won't be able to communicate to each other. So and just kind of deciphering this information here, really these are the 2 key items or elements here in this dialog box. We have the local host, the 49904, which is the Solid Edge electrical communicating port. The Solid Edge MCAD tool communicating port is the 49904. You know, based on your server setups, this may be a little different, but this is a little bit more advanced and something that your CAD administrator will probably set up. But before we connect, let's go ahead and look at the Solid Edge electrical side of the same configuration settings here. So we also, under the Workflow tab again, we have this drop down here for Connected and Configure. So let's go ahead and look at the Configure tab. So this dialog properties box looks a little different than the Solid Edge, but you can see here essentially the same information. So we have the local host, which this time around is going to be the remote application. So this is going to be your Solid Edge MCAD tool communicating port. Then local application is going to be your Solid Edge electrical design. And these should be reflected in both options as the same. So if you get some kind of communication error or unable to connect, this is usually the first step of troubleshooting, to look to make sure that both of the MCAD and ECAD ports are the same in both environments. So just an important little key step here if you have any issues. So let's look at both of these applications side by side again. And we'll run through the quick connected functions. I typically like to do the Solid Edge connection first. And again, you can play around with it and determine what works best for you. But I'm typically in the 3D sharing back to the 2D. But your case may be different. But let's go ahead and look at this feature here. So I'm going to electrical, hit connect. May take a second. And I should have a dialog box here, but for some reason it's not showing up. If I want to go here, connected mode, view log, it's somewhere off screen. Yeah, here it is off the screen. So as you can see here, the connection has been initialized, but it's kind of giving you some additional information for establishing the connection, ensure that the connection action is performed on the ECAD side. So there is no physical connection yet to both modules. I'm just opening it up for connection on the other end. So now if we go into the Solid Edge Electrical tool, go through the connection, we'll see down here at the bottom, connection mode established with Solid Edge. So now it's green, it's telling us we're connecting and communicating. If I go back over to the ECAD tool, we can also confirm that the connected mode has been established with the ECAD application. We're now ready to start exchanging data. So let's go ahead and start exchanging some data. So as I mentioned, we're going to be sharing some data for this example, we're going to be sharing from the ECAD tool into the MCAD tool. And as you can kind of see here, we've already got the components, we've got some harnesses or plugs, and we have a bunch of wires, multi-cores, already pre-configured in the electrical tool. But as you can see, there's nothing over here in the MCAD tool with the exception of the components. There's no wires or harnesses or anything established. So let's go ahead and make that happen. So the first step is we're going to bridge this information out of the Solid Edge Electrical into the MCAD environment. So again, as we kind of step through this in the disconnected mode, pretty much the same process for the connected mode. We'll go to bridge out, we'll build the task, give us a report of what just happened. So as you can see, we've got 12 wires that were exported and 8 components that were exported. So let's close this. We've now given the information. So now if we look over in the ECAD or the MCAD side, we can now see that we have this update harness is green now. I don't know if you noticed before, but it was kind of grayed out before. So it's essentially telling us that a change has been made. Do we want to accept these changes, or we can even reject them if we're not ready to see that change yet? But let's go ahead and hit update harness. And first you're going to see some, I don't want to say errors, but some highlighted features that may need some additional attention. So essentially what happens here is because they're communicating, and maybe you have some differences between part names or part descriptions in one environment don't quite match the other environment. The Solid Edge Electrical tool is smart enough to understand that where these things are set in place. So basically everything in the white here has been populated, and you can even see here that you had a component name and a unique ID name. Now these are the unique ID is your Solid Edge MCAD naming conventions for the specific parts, and the component name is what is being read in the MCAD, or I'm sorry, the ECAD tool. So for the items in this list that aren't populated, we simply just right-click on the orange here, and we can say we want to assign an occurrence. And again, we're looking at the potentiometer. So essentially now Solid Edge's MCAD is asking us, well, what is this part you're trying to configure? So let's select him, and you can see it's now populated. So now I'll just repeat the process for the next two, the rocker SW1s, switch 1. Assign that occurrence, rocker 1, there we go. Third one, assign occurrence, rocker 2. Now we're good. So now we can proceed to the next window. So now we have some terminals that weren't quite communicated over properly, so they need some more defining. And again, we're just going to step through the same process here. Right-click, and now we're going to assign the terminals. So what's cool about this is when we go to assign a terminal, it's already going to highlight the specific terminal or the specific component that needs the tie-in. So it makes our job a little easier. Now I don't have to search for the part. I already know what the system is already highlighting the individual connection that I need. I'll just step through these quickly. Last one. All right, now we're ready to go. So now we can finish. And there we go. You can see it's populated wires. So very easy process. Only took me less than a minute to populate the wires from one system to the other. And now that we can see that even though we just brought in the wires, we also now have a harness component of the MCAD environment. So if I expand this, you'll even see that it's already pre-confirmed what wires we have, what cables we have, what multi-cores. If we highlight any of these, it's highlighting it in the display screen too. All of the wires associated, and even if there's some splices or paths. So again, we didn't have to do any of this work. The system just did it for us automatically. So I'll minimize this. So now that we quickly populated the wires from the Solid Edge electrical tool into the MCAD tool, now we can go and create, generate bundles and kind of finish off the MCAD side of it. And then once you've done that on the MCAD side, again, just basically converting that information over into the ECAD environment is just using the bridge in feature that we kind of examined just a few moments ago. Now let's take a look at the cross select feature. So we're going to select this within the Solid Edge MCAD side. And depending on what version you're using, 2020 or 2021, this may look a little different, but it's a cross section, and this option is only available once you've connected. So if this is grayed out for some reason, it's a telling sign that you aren't connected to both environments. So let's go ahead and hit cross select here. So just to add, the cross selection feature allows users to select objects and components in either the SE MCAD or the SE ECAD tools, and highlights the selected objects in either environment. So let's go ahead and check this out. So we'll start in the Solid Edge MCAD environment first. So over here, we're just going to select a couple of components here, and you can see I click on the feature tree, it highlights green, and then it also highlights the component green. And if we look over here on the SEE side, it's also highlighting that specific component, and it also is highlighting it here in the feature tree as well. So we can kind of go through and select all these different things, and you can see instantaneously on both environments we're getting some visual feedbacks here. So all these electrical components, have already been pre-configured over on the electrical side. Well, let's say, for instance, we do have a part in this design that isn't part of the electrical component. So let's select this console here and see what kind of feedback we get. So obviously it does exist here in the MCAD side, but nothing's highlighting over here on the MCAD side. It's because it's not an electrical component, it's not a device, it's really just the housing. It's not really anything part of the electrical 2D schematic. So you can see here we've got an error here that says 287 cannot be highlighted since it's not present in the current design. So it's already given us some cues, hey, you're selecting something in this environment that doesn't exist in this environment. So just to kind of keep things in mind, if for some reason you're highlighting something in one environment, you're not seeing it highlighted in the other, it's probably not part of the 2D schematic. So now that we're looking at this on the MCAD side, let's go ahead and do the same kind of process over here on the ECAD side. So again, we're just going to start over here. We're just going to start selecting a component over here on the design view, and you can see it highlights over here on the MCAD design view and on the feature tree, and indicating over on the Solid Edge electrical feature tree. So this is going to be extremely important when you have two separate teams or two collaborating teams, maybe not even in the same office, maybe they're in different locations, but you're both communicating, sharing data to each other. This is going to be a great way to kind of get a visual to say, hey, I'm working on this. I got this MCAD design open, but I'm getting visual cues over here in the MCAD that something is happening on the ECAD side. This is where you decide, maybe you're going to communicate to your ECAD designer to figure out what's going on. But if you're not sure, you can't get a hold of them, you can always, as I mentioned, you can always just choose to not update the harness. So once a change is made in the electrical side, you'll get this green indicator stating that there's a change has been made, and you can either accept it or not accept it based on the information that you have available. So again, very, very visual friendly. You can just select something in one environment, and it's going to highlight it in the other environment, even the wires. So I've highlighted wire 1. You can see over here in the electrical side that it's highlighting wire 1 for me in the display view, but also even over here in the and even what's being connected to and from this wire, what components are associated. So very easy, user-friendly tool here. And I wanted to really just kind of highlight the fundamentals of how to connect. You know, depending on your business situation, it could be a lot more complex or even a little bit more simple than what we're showing here today. But the purpose for today's webinar is really just to kind of overview the processes in which you would take to communicate MCAD data either to or from the electrical tool and vice versa. So one kind of final thing we'll look at here is, I guess it would be kind of important in case you are collaborating and you're unable to get a hold of your partner that you're working on the other side. If one of these environments is to happen to lose connection, or maybe just the connection is lost, I'll go ahead and just disconnect the ECAD side, and we'll see what happens over on the MCAD side. So I've disconnected here. We get a note here that says connection has been disabled with Solid Edge. But even the MCAD guy and now kind of understands that, hey, we've been disconnected from the ECAD side, so you may want to either reestablish the connection or kind of figure out what's going on, or maybe you're okay and just going to go on about your way regardless if you're connected or not, or maybe the sharing of data is complete. But just again, just all this stuff is very visually friendly. It's giving you cues and visuals to really kind of help you understand what's going on, and without really a lot of input required on your end. You're just the intelligence of the software is kind of showing you and highlighting, hey, things are changing. Do you want to accept them or not? So in summary, we demonstrated the bridge in and out functions in the disconnected mode. So sharing data not to MCAD, but maybe some other outsourced application. Use the bridge in and out functions in the connected mode to integrate the Solid Edge Electrical MCAD tool with the ECAD tool. And then we looked at the cross-selection feature in Solid Edge to kind of highlight parts in both environments and see how that works. So with all that being said, this will conclude today's Solid Edge Wire and Harness Design webinar focused on the connected mode. We're going to be adding a lot more content on this subject in the very near future. So stay tuned and please subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already. And now at this time, we'll take any questions you may have. And if for some reason there are no questions, please feel free to direct any future questions to the contact information you see here. And again, thank you all for attending and your time, and have a great rest of your day.